From rumors of relocation to Stanley Cup champion, and now for an opportunity to be in the market for 50 years, the Panthers have signaled that South Florida is their home.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Wednesday, September 18th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONAHL for $20 off your first purchase. You could do that all at Game Time. So, Florida Panther fans, grateful to be back on another edition of the show. Now, as the season has officially started, with it being media day and then training camp officially starting on Thursday from Fort Lauderdale, which we're going to get to mostly in the third segment. We're going to discuss rookie showcase in segment number 2 and more on hopefuls for the future. But the most important topic of the day in the world of the Florida Panthers is a new extension with Broward County. And here to discuss that all with me is who other than on a Winans Wednesday. Jacob Winans is back here on the show. Jacob, welcome back, and what an exciting time for you to be here on a Winans Wednesday, my friend.
Yeah, we look for any kind of exciting news we can get during the offseason. And just before training camp opens, we get the training camp roster and everything, and rookie showcase just wrapped up, and we get some fantastic news. The Broward County has extended their partnership with the Panthers to last another 5 years through the end of that current agreement, and then with the option for 2 more 5-year extensions down the line. So very exciting. And it's also really validating just as a franchise, going through so many years of relocation rumors and the questions about whether hockey could work here and if this was sustainable. The Panthers organization, the ownership, they bet on themselves. They bet that it could work out. And in the same summer that they become Stanley Cup champions for the first time, they extend their agreement to stay in Broward County. And we have our team. They're locked in. They're not going anywhere. And that's something that we had hoped for a very, very long time. And at times it seemed unattainable. It seemed so far away. But getting that Stanley Cup and getting the commitment of Broward County and the South Florida community, it really feels like a cherry on top of the perfect hockey summer for the Florida Panthers.
And you think of for when Broward County announced that in the last 2 postseasons, the Florida Panthers helped generate over $100 million in the economy too. So that's a big deal when you think of just these 2 playoff runs. So, but for the Panthers, they have a chance for at least until 2043, 50 years in the market, which is something that I never thought would be possible. And then them voting unanimously 9-0, but still has to go to a final approval to the Broward County directors. But another thing that the Panthers are going to be able to do in these next 4 years with what their current lease agreement was supposed to be until 2028, this next 4-year period is going to allow them to build around the arena for some more revenue streams. They've been doing a lot of the projects of the in-arena renovation, for like the Jameson Crossbar, for what they've been doing in the arena too. So it's also trust in the ownership group, because they're putting the investment in themselves. They're not asking the politicians to give them money in order to build around. So the politicians have said, okay, we've been able to trust you for this time. So let's put it in writing, signatures, votes, and now along with the championship, you have shown that you have been a sustainable product here. And I know the championship is great and everything, but when you think about when you think about in whether it's life, going through life, or you think about your "I've made it" moment. For the Panthers, it really feels like they've made it. And Jacob, I know I've been covering the Stanley Cup summer for the Panthers this whole summer and talking about its stories of the Cup, but now it's officially hit me. It's hit me that the Florida Panthers are Stanley Cup champions. I can't. It's felt like disbelief all summer, but it really we talk about how much we fight for this sport, and it's just like we now don't have to worry a single bit about anything beyond that. Now we can move to the next chapter of continuing our mission.
Yeah, it's huge, and the term that I like to use for this, it's stamped. The Stanley Cup is huge. It's the ultimate prize in hockey, and the Panthers as a franchise were effectively stamped when they won that Stanley Cup. But with that, I think regardless of the Stanley Cup win or not, I think they probably would have gotten the same decision because they've proven that they're a sustainable brand, and that hockey, it really feels like that stamp of approval that hockey works. This is a hockey market, and it's a commitment to continuing to grow that. Being able to develop around the arena, that's huge. There are other markets, other arenas, like you and I have both traveled quite a bit to different sports venues. It's very atypical what the Panthers have with an arena, not a whole lot around it for post-game, pre-game. We have Sawgrass Mills, of course, but not a whole lot around it. Giving the Panthers a chance to have that now, to develop that part of it. That's the kind of legacy that's going to last long after this Stanley Cup. The Stanley Cup win is not forgotten, but it will become history, as all Stanley Cup champions do. When this Stanley Cup championship is history, there will be something tangible that sticks around, that fans can enjoy, that generations of Panthers fans can enjoy. That it's a seal of approval that hockey works here. There was a time, and many Panthers fans will remember this, that it was not a guarantee that the Panthers were going to get to keep their lease agreement here in Broward County. And actually current or former players who were current players at the time, members of the roster, had to go in front of the Broward County Board of Commissioners, and they had to basically beg the county to allow them to continue playing. They had to plead their own case in front of Broward County, and I believe they barely won that vote. They might have gotten it by 1 or 2 votes, and the team sent players that were on the roster to the county to ask them to allow them to continue playing there. And it's really full circle, because now they go before the board as Stanley Cup champions, with an incredible fan base to prove it. They've generated money for the economy that they can now take to the board, and it shows that they bet on themselves, and it paid off. And the county is going to reap the benefits of that, because the county gave them a chance when everyone was telling them that they shouldn't. The eyes of the hockey world were on them at one time, expecting them to deny that vote, and the Panthers were going to be sent packing to another location. And the county gave them a chance, and it's paid off now.
Yeah, and it just so happens that when you've had different voices in ownership versus one, now you don't have to worry about that for the Panthers. It's just everyone can breathe more for what the future is of the sport for hockey in this region too, and it's just for the development of the area too, and everything for this region. It just means so much to so many people, and you and I weren't even there from the start. Obviously, you weren't born yet for that. And then you think about even the people who were just in their 20s, and now they're in their 50s, and you wonder sometimes in the back of their head, they wonder if they had located, would they even follow the sport anymore? Or like Arizona is going through that right now too. So it's like, and think about the night of the Stanley Cup win, the news of Alex Morello selling the rights to no longer pursuing a new franchise in Arizona as an expansion. It's just like, you think constantly it could have been us for this, and now it's a thing of the past. It's history in the best way possible for the Panthers. But we're excited. We are can't wait for more, and we cannot wait for more things to happen. Also, one more thing before we move on. Just because they extended the lease with Broward County does not mean Amerant Bank Arena will be the venue the whole time. So it's within the county. So we're not going to entertain necessarily a new arena yet because they're of the renovations. So that's something like 5-10 years along the line that we will get more into that conversation. So
Fort Lauderdale question mark.
But yeah, question mark, but it's Amerant Bank Arena in Sunrise, Florida for now. But let's transition over to segment number 2, where we're going to discuss more about Rookie Showcase and recapping it and the most impressive thing we saw from the showcase. We're going to discuss that more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. And Game Time is a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you the incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time while searching through thousands of tickets. And you could get seat views, panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. It's the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Game Time ticket coverage, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. And once again, I'd like to thank you guys all for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Wednesday. And if you didn't have a chance to check out our episode yesterday with one of the co-hosts of Locked On Heat, Wes Goldberg, make sure you catch that episode here on the podcast feed. And also, Jacob, we found out why the Stanley Cup was in the Kaseya Center. It wasn't just a random visit. It was actually a day with the cup from Dr. Derek Anderson, who works for both the Miami Heat and the Florida Panthers. So he wanted to share it with both franchises. So that's something we found out after that recording. So pretty cool there. But we Rookie Showcase has wrapped up in Nashville. Some of the guys are back with the Panthers as far as their training camp roster. Some guys of the AHL guys are getting their opportunities, which we'll discuss more in the third segment too. But the Panthers, even though they went 1-2 in the tournament, there were a lot of stretches in this Rookie Showcase where they were really tilting the ice in their direction, especially in the second game against Carolina. Obviously, the wheels fell off a little bit in that second game after Jan Spooner was taken out. Lucas Matecha came in, gave up the 7 goals, but the defensive coverage was not the best for the Panthers there in that second game. I mean, penalties taken, a hat trick for one of the players on Carolina. But in the first game, Panthers were really tilting the ice, really going in with speed for them too. But I mean, you think about the guys like O'Cooley or Hunter St. Martin, who scored in all 3 games for the Panthers. They're a 6th-round pick. Multiple teams passed on them too. But also in both games, the 3 games of the Rookie Showcase, Cooper Black went the distance in 2 out of the 3 games. Yeah, we spoke about size, but also using the size to his advantage there too. So really, and this is one of the oldest. This was the oldest roster of the 4 teams in Nashville this weekend. So really got to show some of the veteran experience there too for the Panthers. You're not going to let one period in the second game really define the whole tournament too. But still, the Florida Panthers really showed their style of play. And Grayson Sachin, that's another standout for the Panthers too there. So he got a camp invite for the Panthers in the training camp. So what stuck out to you?
Yeah. So admittedly, I didn't get to watch all the games beginning to end, relying somewhat on a spotty feed and a lot of highlights. But as most teams are at this time of year with the rookie showcases. But I would say that the results don't matter as much to me in the rookie showcase games, especially a team like the Panthers, given that they aren't loaded with prospects. They have one of the lower ranked prospect pools right now, which is the cost of contending. Not a big deal. You just look to see if you can find a diamond in the rough or a guy who looks like he might have an NHL future that you didn't really have in mind. And the big one for me was Hunter St. Martin, 6th round pick. And you think about these Bill Zito late round gems that you have to have if you're going to continue competing and keep your cup window open. Having those kind of guys who flash like this and show that they're better than their draft position, that's what allows you to take bigger swings and make those kind of trades that the Panthers have made where you give up some picks and being able to develop those prospects is huge. So Hunter St. Martin, loved what I saw from him. His highlights look great. He showed a goal scoring touch. It seemed like he adapted well to the playing style. I liked his game. Grayson Sawchin, who was a 2nd round pick, but the Panthers' first pick, I believe not this past draft, but the draft before. He looked really good. Great hands. I don't know if you saw his shootout goal against Tampa, but that was absolutely filthy.
Nasty.
My goodness. Yeah, he's a guy that the Panthers see as a bottom or middle 6 forward, but there's some upside there. There's some offense to his game. Size, we'll see how he's able to fill out. But I like his game a lot. He plays with a lot of grit, a lot of tenacity. He's not going to have a problem forechecking. And if you watch any of his junior games, he tends to mix it up, get under people's skin. That's exactly what the Panthers look for. But most interesting player in camp for me was definitely Cooper Black. In goal, the Panthers have developed goalies really well recently, but Cooper Black is kind of a unicorn in the fact that if he were to play in the NHL this year, he would be the tallest goalie in the NHL. He might be the tallest goalie in NHL history if he plays an NHL game. You might have to fact check me on that, but he's listed at 6'10". That I believe he would be the tallest goalie in NHL history. I think Ben Bishop may have had that title at 6'8". Or something close to it.
He would surpass it by 3 inches.
3 inches.
Koskinen, Matt Sogard, Ivan Fedotov, who's with the Flyers currently.
Correct. Yeah, those guys are all 6'7", I believe. He would be he's 6'10", which is absolutely insane. You think when he drops into the butterfly, he's at regular goalie height. It's insane. So I'll be interested to see what the Panthers do with his development. Obviously, a guy of that height, you worry about how he's going to cover shots down low. The 5-hole might be a little bit of a bigger target. The athleticism side to side, but that you can't teach size. And if you can find a way to work with his size, he could be a really intriguing prospect. So I'm excited about the goalie future. Matt Guzda dealt with an injury. He's back, got himself a camp invite. Cooper Black is an intriguing prospect. And then the Panthers had some pretty good forwards that flashed in this dev camp too. So I'm excited. I think the Panthers have some real good complementary pieces coming up through the pipeline. I don't see any standout superstars that are going to be line drivers necessarily, which that's not necessarily what the Panthers need. But I do see some guys who have a chance to be role players, definitely.
Yeah, and other guys there, Josh Davies, his 2nd time around. Riley Hughes, no relation. He does have a brother named Jack Hughes, but it's not the Jack Hughes that we know from the Ohio State University. Obviously, recently, a guy like Jake Wise was with there now. Jake Wise is with the Chicago Wolves. He was an assist away from the Gordie Howe hat trick there. One of his scouting reports talks about offensive attributes, but to hone in on his defensive play. There's also a goal by 3 guys who went to Boston schools too. 2 of them from Boston University, one of them from BC, Maxim Zuccarello, Jamie Armstrong, and Nicholas Zabane is one, or the 3 there. So we spoke about St. Martin playing with Medicine Hat, guy along with a guy who was drafted 4th overall in the recent draft, in Caden Lindstrom. But then you think about these other guys who have been in big name schools, like the guys we just mentioned there, Reese Gaber and Kedden Pearson, 2 guys from University of North Dakota. We were familiar with that recently with Matt Kierstead, who Matt Kierstead's part of camp too for the Panthers. So you're seeing for what are the programs that Bill Zito is looking from too. So you play with superstar players. Let's get to know you guys a little bit too, and let's see what you can do in our system based on what you learn from other guys too. So that's also another thing that I notice.
Yeah, and keep in mind, there's also some championship pedigree in that camp too. Mike Benning, for example, won a national championship in college, and was a huge part of that. Was right around a point per game defenseman. I believe he scored in their national championship winning game. So he's a guy who brings some championship pedigree from a lower level, but those games, the intensity of those games is the same. I promise you, the players that are playing for an NCAA championship are feeling everything that the players who are playing for a Stanley Cup are feeling. It means the world to them. So a guy like him, I love seeing his experience. And then you did mention the Panthers have a track record of finding these good college prospects that either slip through the cracks or they sign them late. Interesting prospect for me out of camp was Ben Steeves. I like what he shows. Pure goal scorer. That guy's got a shot. So I'll be interested to see what he does in camp. I believe he got himself a camp invite. And the Charlotte Checkers should have some pretty intriguing options coming out of this. So I do like that the Panthers are prioritizing some of the older prospects, the guys who are in the 20 to 24 range, that that not necessarily fresh out of juniors or years away from contributing. These guys who are at least somewhat matured as far as their body types and their roles. And I like that they prioritize that with this rookie showcase. Definitely.
Yeah, we did that. We said that mostly with guys like Wilmer Skoog, earlier with Riley Hughes. And also Jay O'Brien is another one of 25 and over for guys who looking to get a chance to, and also guys who are experiencing North American ice for the first time, and Christoph Macias too for him coming over from Poland. So those are guys who are getting their chance there for the Panthers. But we're going to transition over to segment number 3, where we're going to discuss more about the training camp roster and some of the guys that we are looking for, who has most to prove. We are going to discuss that more next here on Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And you heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet up to $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to get every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. Third and final segment here on this Wednesday, September 18th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Wednesday. So the Florida Panthers announced their training camp roster too, but a few things that happened right before this announcement. The Florida Panthers had their Cats Classic there, hosted by Steve Goldstein, and we saw videos of Nate Schmidt smiling, and all I thought was, man, Nate Schmidt seems like a really fun dude. Really got excited that the Panthers also got some of the newcomers got their opportunity to be on the golf course. FanFest is also on Saturday from War Memorial, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Too, and the website will provide you with the training camp practices that some of them select will be open to the public. So the roster: 31 forwards, 16 defensemen, 17 goaltenders, and 7 goaltenders, and 17 returning players from their Stanley Cup championship win. So a few guys we know what their next destination is going to be, Jacob. Like Grayson Sachin and St. Martin are going to be going to juniors after the first few days of camp. But we also have some PTOs here for the Panthers. John Leonard, brother of Ryan Leonard, who was recently a first-round pick for the Washington Capitals, with games under his belt at 26, a lot to prove, bouncing around from the Sharks, Predators, and the recently Arizona. Aiden McDonough is another PTO added for the Panthers there. Northeastern University, 24 years old, only 6 games under his belt. So 3 PTO guys at forward, but also another player who maybe has something to prove, but we kind of know who he is at this point. Zach Dalby is back with the Panthers too. Paul Maurice was honest with him about the taxi squad, saying, "Hey, there are guys who are a little bit up on the depth chart, so we're not gonna have you with part of the taxi squad." Good for him that he gets to spend time with his family, but the competitive side for him, a little tough for him to be left out. But as far as the forwards, when you look at this, who do you think? Where are you looking at as far as like guys to prove that if I didn't name them already?
Yeah, as far as the forward group goes, I feel like one guy that has completely been sort of swept under the rug as far as a name who impressed in camp last year, got some NHL time, and people seem to just have forgotten about him since the playoffs. Will Lockwood. I really liked Will Lockwood's game last year. I thought he had the worst shooting luck. He hit the post, I think, 4 times looking for his first NHL goal. And then had the incident where he accidentally ran into Marc-Andre Fleury, concussed him, was suspended and was completely incidental contact, not intentional at all. Drops the gloves and gets knocked out in a fight with Brandon Duhaime. Suffered his own concussion there. And then as the trade deadline rolls around, he lost his spot. Stephen Lawrence started to play well in the playoffs, so Lockwood never got another look. Interested to see how he comes into camp. The Panthers should have some really interesting bottom 6 battles, and I think Lockwood's in contention for a roster spot because Paul Maurice really liked him, love his speed, and he's a sneaky possibility to replace Ryan Lomberg in a 4th-line role with speed. So Lockwood's the guy I'm looking at. There's some bottom 6 battles should be good. Rasmus Asplund is back. He's a guy who might compete. Mackenzie Entwistle is going to compete for a bottom 6 role. The name we've discussed all offseason about it, is he ready to make the jump, is Mackie Samoskevich. We'll see how he looks in camp. Is he ready for a full-time NHL job? That's the biggest question mark for me as far as the forward group goes. But the bottom 6 battles should be really, really intriguing. There's probably anywhere from like 9 to 12 names of guys who are going to compete for the final maybe 4-5 spots in the lineup. It's going to be really interesting to see how that pans out.
Yeah, but a little different on the defensive side of things for the Panthers there. It's a little different this time because you're going to have some guys who are probably there to learn, like Nathan Staios, Marek Alsher, Evan Naus, Mikolas Hovorka, but then you have veterans like a Jacob Magna, South Florida native Jacob Magna, 31 years old, who's been here already. But then but for the defense for the Panthers, you may think that maybe this might be a last chance for Matt Kierstead to try to prove himself. But then you see who he was behind already in the depth department for the defense in Tobias Bjornfoot and Uvis Balinskis. So a lot of those I'm not saying the D is officially set for the Panthers, but I'm looking more of the guys who might have to challenge for what is beyond the 6 that are probably going to be dressed, because we know something about Paul Maurice. He does not like changing his defense core too much from game to game.
Yeah, definitely. And some of those D battles are going to be really interesting. And the biggest wild card for me on defense is definitely Toby Bjornfoot. I think of the fringe NHLers that the Panthers have, he probably has the highest upside. It's just going to come down to a numbers game. Are they going to be able to is he going to do enough to earn a roster spot? And if not, are they going to be able to sneak him through waivers and continue to develop his game? Because I think there's a lot of potential there. You just would hate to lose him through waivers when you know there's untapped potential, even if he's not ready for a every night NHL role. I do sort of wonder if AHL time would better suit him, where he could play top pair minutes and and do that and not have to be the 7th D on a contending team. Because that's one thing that was instrumental in Gus Forsling developing, was that Marcus Nunavara got hurt and Forsling had to play a lot. He didn't go to the AHL. He had to play a lot of NHL time. I don't think Bjornfoot's going to get that kind of chance to play a lot of NHL time, unless, of course, there's injuries, which we hope there's not. So if it's ice time that he needs, I hope he can sneak through waivers, but that's a big question mark. So he's the guy I have my eye on most in camp. Uvis Belinskis is another guy I'm watching in camp. He played really well in his limited time last year, filled in well in the times that Ekblad was hurt, filled in well to start the season. He's mobile. He's got a good shot. He's a good passer. I like Belinskis a lot. I think he's going to challenge for minutes. I don't think he's necessarily a lock for 7th D. I think he's got an outside chance at 6th D and getting actual meaningful playing time. And then the one guy on the D-core, you mentioned Matt Kierstead. I think that ship may have sailed a little bit as far as meaningful NHL minutes, but you never say never. But the guy I'm looking at is Mikolas Hovorka, 6'6", right shot defenseman, which the Panthers lack, and really physical presence. And he's not coming from a junior league; he's coming from the pro ranks, and I believe he played in the Czech league. So he's a guy who might impress in camp. Panthers love their physicality; they love the big bodies on the blue line, especially in a bottom pair role. Definitely not ruling him out as someone who could open eyes in camp.
Yeah, him and Oliver Okulier played against each other. Now both of them are part of camp for the Florida Panthers here. So that's pretty cool that once opponents, now they're coming together here for the Panthers. But also let's also not forget that if Spencer Knight is part of the roster, it'll be probably with 22 players, and because of the salary cap implications. So maybe that possibility of the numbers game is, even if Spencer Knight even earns the number 2 spot, it's like, hey, we're just doing this just to protect the roster. And it might not be an indictment on Spencer, which gives us an opportunity to go to the goalies too for the Panthers. We basically know who the 1, 2, and 3 are. We love what we saw out of Cooper Black for the Panthers here. But also, it just goes to show that this is possibly a future project for 3rd goaltender, or maybe even 2nd when the Panthers move on from Sergei Bobrovsky in 2 years too. Matt Gusta to have coming back from the injury of last year, but also a veteran goaltender who, when I tell you, bounced around the ECHL and AHL, he's bounced around. In Ken Appleby, 29 years old, from the Devils, Predators, and Islanders. So that's a goaltender who has a lot to prove, even though it's going to be a little harder with getting him into the mix for the Panthers here. So that's the guy who has probably the hardest route to make it to the roster. What are you looking at with the goaltending?
Yeah, so Ken Appleby's one I want to touch on, just because I think his story is really interesting. Last season, the rare league hat trick for the goalie. He played in the ECHL, AHL, and NHL last season. Played in all 3 leagues, which is super cool to say. Wouldn't be shocked if he lands himself at least a deal with Charlotte, or could even see him do some ECHL time. Looking at the goalie list here, one thing that stands out to me, and I find it so interesting, is the Panthers clearly have a type in net. Because if you look at the goalies on this roster, Sergei Bobrovsky is actually the shortest goalie on the roster at 6'2". Matt Guzda 6'5", Knight is 6'3", Cooper Black listed at 6'8", but reports himself as 6'10", Cormier 6'3", Appleby 6'5", Drieger 6'4". And that was after last season having Anthony Stolars, who was 6'6", 6'7", somewhere in that range. They love their big body goaltenders. They prioritize developing guys who are big, athletic, and cover a lot of space. Sergei Bobrovsky is kind of the outlier there where that's concerned. He's the more super athletic,
technically sound
goalie. Technically sound, exactly. And that's his game. But they definitely have a type for developing these really tall, long, big body goaltenders who cover a lot of space. So I'm interested to see who makes the biggest jump developmentally. The biggest battle, obviously, in this camp is going to be Knight versus Drieger for the 2 spot. Knight definitely has the upper hand where that's concerned, unless, of course, they want to roster a full 23. But where the AHL is concerned, we'll see who gets the number 2 job behind either Drieger or Knight. My guess is it comes down to either Guzda or Cooper Black. Guzda has shown some really good flashes. Actually had a really solid training camp last year. Played really well and earned himself last season a couple of call-ups in injury situations where he was the backup for the Panthers.
For Alex Lyon at certain points.
Correct. Yep. He backed up Alex Lyon at times. And he was expected to have a really good year in the AHL last season and got hurt early in the season, missed the rest of the year. So I'm glad he's back. It'll be interesting to see how that pans out. But Cooper Black, everyone wants to see Cooper Black and see what he's got. He's a giant in the net, and we'll see if he's ready for AHL time or if he's going to get some ECHL seasoning.
And we can't wait to cover it all here for you on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and more of what they're saying at training camp. But first, we do have Media Day to take care of. And after today's episode, we will be recapping all of that and more here on the show. But Jacob, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this edition of the show. Tell everybody where they can follow you online, my friend.
Yep, you can follow me on X at Jacob Winans 8. And yeah, we'll be picking up a lot in the next few days. It's the best time of year, unless you're a member of the Florida Panthers, because Paul Maurice's training camps are notoriously brutal. So anyone who's been partying too hard with the Stanley Cup, they're in for a rude awakening this week.
Oh yeah, and just to get back into game shape, that's the best part about it. But Jacob, thank you so much, and see you next week, my friend.
Thanks for having me.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Steel Roden, and Locked On AHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Jacob Winans, and you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.